So I will start my presentation by talking about open research, including research data management and open data. Then I will focus on open access publishing options, including licensing, predatory publishers, rights retention, funding options, and open research practice. We leave some considerations to wrap up. Starting with just a brief definition of open access. Open access means making research publications freely available online, so anyone can benefit from reading and using research. Open access can be more than making research available to read, but also allowing others to reuse that research. It uses limited copyright restrictions, ensuring credit is given to the authors. However, authors must assess if there are commercial or security interests or challenges that interfere with open access. Open research comprises openness throughout the research cycle through collaborative working and sharing, and making research methodology, software, code, and equipment freely available online, along with instructions for using it. Open research includes making publications freely available online, open access, in addition to underlying research data, open data. Research data management contributes to more reliable, efficient, and impactful research outcomes. There are several benefits, as you can see, such as data security and publication opportunities. Commencing successful research data management involves creating a data management plan. This plan, referred to as a DMP, is a systematic dossier where you articulate essential details regarding your research endeavor. Open data pertains to the concept of releasing research data into the public domain, allowing it to be easily discovered and utilized again. More and more funding entities are requiring researchers to share their research data results as a prerequisite for adhering to grant regulations. Why? Sharing research data serves the greater good by enabling the public to access and explore research outcomes. Making your data available also fosters greater potential for reuse and replication of research findings. When you expose your data to the wider research community, you amplify prospects for collaboration with fellow researchers. Many funding organizations will require data to be shared using an established data repository. This practice is grounded in two main reasons: secure and sustainable storage, and also the opportunity of having DOIs and enable citations. Retreedata is where you can find a list of repositories in addition to your own institutional repository. As some example of repositories, I can mention Reshare. This is the UK Data Services online data repository, and Zenodo, primarily commissioned by the EC to house data from European research projects, but anyone can deposit there. To publish in open access, there are mainly two routes: the gold open access through Open Access Journal, where the paper is published in open access, and the green route, or the repository route, where the paper is not published in open access, but the version of the paper can usually be made available in open access in a repository, usually after an embargo. Many of the open access journals require the payment of an article processing charge, called an APC, but there are many that do not charge. These are called diamond open access. The Open Library of Humanities is one example of this. Gold open access publishing can include pure or fully open access journals, meaning that the journal only publishes in open access. The best way to find an open access journal is to consult DOAJ, the Directory of Open Access Journals. DOAJ is also a good place to ensure the journal is credible and not a predatory journal. It can be also through an hybrid journal that is basically a subscription journal that offers a paid open access option. It can also be via a transformative or read and published journal, where the whole subscription paid by the university library already includes the publishing cost. If you don't know which are the publisher agreements that include the transformative journals available for you, contact the library. Or it can be also via open access books. In this case, book processing charges will also apply. I mentioned costs to publish in the gold route. However, many fully open access journals do not have APCs. Consulting DOAJ, the most comprehensive directory of open access journals, we can filter by journals without APCs. This print screen was taken some time ago, but we can actually see that the most part of them, 70% actually, are open access journals without any cost to publish. If there are costs and if they are being funded, authors can request funding through the funder block grant. UKRI, Wellcome Trust are some examples, or through grant applications. In the latter, please ensure you include open access charges in the grant application. The funding bodies will expect that the publication will be made available in open access under a Creative Commons license, and that they will be acknowledged. If you are not being funded, check if your university or your co-author universities have institutional funds to cover your publication by contacting the library. Some journals have waivers to authors who have no funding available to pay for open access. Contact the library also to find out if there are transformative agreements you can use. And there are several open access initiatives for publishing articles and monographs where in many cases there are no fees for the author. Peer Community In is a nonprofit initiative with disciplinary communities of researchers reviewing and recommending preprints, providing scientists with a place to evaluate, validate, and promote their work that is separate and distinct from publication in a journal. One current challenge in publishing nowadays is to avoid predatory journals. Predatory journals are those publishers who charge a fee for the publication of material without providing the publication service an author would expect, such as peer review and editing. Predatory publishers typically contact potential authors directly via email to offer their services and encourage publication, with many starting to branch out into offering academic conference. There are some recommendations that I can give you to avoid predatory publishers. First step is, if it's an open access journal, check if it's listed in DOAJ, as it's the most comprehensive database of open access journals, and they have a serious selection process to include journals. You can also see if the journal is indexed in any well-known database, such as Web of Science or EBSCO. Look at the website quality. Are there grammar errors or lack essential information? A good journal should have all the useful information in their website, not hiding fees and explaining how the peer review process looks like. Look at the editorial board. Do you recognize any names? If it's an open access journal, it will most likely use Creative Commons license. Finally, never heard about the journal? Ask a peer or a senior colleague if they have. Finally, I recommend using the tool Think, Check, Submit that is available online to help authors to avoid predatory publishers. The rights retention strategy is a mechanism firstly envisioned by the University of Harvard and more recently by a group of mainly European national funders, including Wellcome Trust and UKRI, to promote the deposit of full text accepted manuscripts in institutional repositories upon acceptance with no embargo and under a Creative Commons license. This empowers researchers to keep their copyright rights by not transferring those to the publisher. It supports the self-archiving route to open access by allowing researchers to publish in a subscription or hybrid journal and make the manuscript immediately available open access through self-deposit. This is usually done by authors applying a CC BY license upon submission and ensures the widest possible access to research outputs, as well as meeting funder requirements. It's being widely implemented in UK and European universities. Exeter's rights retention policy will be in place from the 1st of January 2024. Modern online tools for computing and research offer researchers a seamless way to grant immediate public access to information. Electronic lab notebooks, for example, is a software tool that is, in its most basic form, replicates an interface, much like a page in a paper lab notebook. Online code repositories like GitHub and collaborative productivity platforms such as Google Drive or OneNote can serve as an effective means to document and release fundamental research materials. These tools transcend their role as mere information publishers. They usher in the potential for a novel form of research, one that stretches beyond limited circles to engage a broader public. They facilitate a research process that is co-creative, marked by extensive collaboration, and adaptable in light of constructive critique. In certain research fields, particularly health and psychological sciences, practices are being adopted to pre-register study hypotheses and protocols prior to conducting research. This promotes transparency, prevents biased practice, and eliminates poor practice. Platforms like Open Science Framework are used for this, and public registration establish research priority and result integrity. Additionally, models involving peer review at earlier research stages are emerging, enhancing study design quality and result reliability. Some publishers even offer registered reports, enabling peer review of study designs and committing to publishing final results upon acceptance. In recent years, there has been a surge in preprint service and journal publishers facilitating early research findings dissemination. Notably, arXiv, dating back to 1991, is preeminent in physical and mathematical science, while bioRxiv serves other domains. Preprints are preliminary versions of scholarly works released prior to peer review, providing a means to share research that might otherwise face delayed or restricted publication via traditional peer review. Preprints complement peer review and often coincide with open peer review, enhancing transparency and accountability while bringing research to the public more promptly. Open peer review has many different definitions. It is in general a catch-all term used to describe any peer review model in which aspects of the peer review process are made publicly available, either before or after publication. For example, open peer review models may include publishing peer review content, open commenting from the wider community, and or open discussion between authors, editors, and reviewers. Regarding to licensing, a copyright license is a form of contract, also known as a permissions agreement based in copyright law. The legal owner in the first instance is the creator, author of the work. Licenses allow authors and creators to retain copyright while granting others permission to use their work. They enable you to modify your copyright terms and allow you to work to be copied, distributed, edited, remixed, or built upon within the boundaries of copyright law. Under UK law, intellectual property generated by an employee in the course of their usual work belongs to the employer. However, many universities waive ownership of copyright in materials of scholarly nature, such as academic journal articles. This is what is done in the University of Exeter. Creative Commons provides a way to licensing and sharing and reuse your work under the terms that are flexible and legally sound. Creative Commons offer a core suite of 6 copyright licenses. All CC licenses require that users provide attribution to the author when the material is used or shared. CC BY only is the most open license, granting maximum opportunities for reuse, subject to attribution, of course. The other 5 licenses combine CC BY with 1 or more additional terms. Non-commercial prohibits reuse for commercial purpose. No derivatives prohibits others from modifying or adapting your work. Share alike requires adaptations of the material to be released under the same license. As final considerations, the scholarly publishing model is steadily shifting from pay-per-view subscriptions to fully open access. Plan S is accelerating this shift, and funders are demonstrating alignment by embedding open access requirements in their policies, and universities are supporting researchers doing that. We are in a transitional stage where there is a complex mix of publishing models and different ways of making your research open access. Use DOAS to find where to publish in open access. Many journals do not charge APCs, and there are funds available if you are being funded or if the university has institutional funds. Creative Commons license and rights retention allow you to publish immediately in open access. And use Think, Check, Submit to avoid predatory journals when you are publishing. Finally, explore open research practice, such as preprints. Thank you. I hope this has been useful, and I'm very happy to answer any question you may have.
Sophia, that was really helpful. It's great to see what an institution can do to help researchers across the full disciplinary spread to engage more in open research practices. We have a variety of questions come through. Joe from Brooks noticed that many of the sort of peer community and subsections are devoted to science fields, and tools such as open notebooks are typically devoted to quantitative research domains. What tips and tricks would you suggest for researchers who are working in more qualitative fields of research?
I think that's absolutely right. I think there's a need for more diverse tools and techniques available to cover more disciplines and to actually be more suitable for specific types of research. I think especially I think one of the tips that I would give is to engage with your community of researchers to try to find out, firstly, which is exactly the culture and the current practice that there are. There are many communities that do prefer some techniques, some of them actually old school regarding to collaboration. So I would firstly try that way to understand. The other would be to find out subject repositories. There are many that are specific to disciplines. So that could be a way to engage with other authors that are conducting more open research and to actually collaborate with them.
Thank you, that's really helpful. A sort of related question, Tish from Birmingham asks, how do you ensure that when you're trying to ensure that researchers engage with the open research agenda at Exeter, do you find differences across disciplines or fields, both in terms of engagement with the idea of open research, but also the different challenges raised by open research within those particular disciplines? And again, qualitative research is highlighted as a challenging area, perhaps compared to quantitative.
Definitely. I think mostly because there are disciplines that are more historically have been publishing and collaborating more openly for longer than others. I think that's one of the main things. For example, STEAM, they are publishing in open access, and they have had funders' policies require them to publish in open access sooner than, for example, persons from humanities that they are starting now in January 2024 to actually have a requirement to publish open access monographs. So there's kind of that knowledge and awareness and history in publishing in open access. The other challenge is also about specific disciplines that may have more specific challenges in publishing open access. For example, I'm going to give an example again for humanities. Publishing books is slightly different than publishing an article. It involves many copyright issues, especially with third-party copyright material. So there's additional challenges depending on the disciplines that actually kind of support that distinction of engagement from different researchers in different communities.
That's really helpful, thank you. A question from an anonymous attendee who asks, if you're looking to publish a paper but are still working with the data, and this is a sort of quite large or varied data set which could support multiple potential papers, would you publish in a repository to accompany the paper you're getting out then the full set, or just that portion of the data relating that to that particular paper?
Yeah, so that's kind of a tricky question.
General rule here?
I think it will. I cannot give you a very decisive answer on that. It will depend on many factors, but in a general and balanced way, I would suggest to just make available the data regarding to the publication that is already there. I think for many reasons. Firstly, because there's that kind of alignment, the publication is there and the data is available as well. And also because the whole point of making data available is to make that understandable and reusable. And if it's not with the whole set of information, it may not be that useful to share so much time in advance. So I would suggest that, but again, it would need to be considered all the factors involving the publication and the data.
That's really helpful. Thank you so much. Someone notes, what are the sort of easiest ways to find out if a journal uses the Creative Commons license? Is this something that's normally very immediately visible on a website, or does it tend to be buried in terms and conditions and publication guidelines? Is there a common way that many journals and publishers have in expressing that they're using this Creative Commons route?
Yes. So, for example, as I mentioned, good journals actually have all the information in our website, so they could have that more easily found in the website, or sometimes slightly trickier to find it, but they should have that information. If they don't, it's a huge red flag, I would say. The second advice would be to check in DOAJ. They have that information about, the key information about the journal, if they charge an APC, what kind of licenses they use. So that kind of information is available.
Thank you. When encouraging people to engage in open access, with a number of questions in the chat and in the Q&A stream, talk about that sometimes people can feel this conflicts with things such as academic career prospects, or also departmental prospects in exercises like the REF. So if someone came to you and said, what's more important, us getting a kind of 3 or 4 star REF publication or open access, the question based on the premise that there's a conflict between the two, how would you respond to that? Is there such a conflict, or is it a case of having to choose one or the other? Actually, is there no conflict at all?
I think it can actually be a conflict. And I think institutions, and more generally research assessment, so not only regarding to institutions, but also covering funders as well, actually play a part on that regarding to research assessment criteria. I can mention that actually there have been having some moves towards moving away from that. For example, we are talking about the DORA declaration. So responsible metrics is being actually embedded in funders' policies as well, by removing the importance of journal impact factors, for example, and pointing more to the quality of the work instead. So there are still much work to do around how to actually find good criteria that cover with more fairness the research assessment. For example, the other movement initiative that I can talk about is COARA, is the Coalition for Research Advancement Assessment. so there are several actions, and institutions are signing up to be members of that and committing themselves to actually engage with that agenda and change research processes to be more inclusive and not enter in so much conflict with openness as they were before.
That's really helpful, thank you. One final question. We have questions from Louis and a couple of others on potential issues of self-plagiarism arising if you publish something openly and are then planning to do further work on it, and perhaps the best place to publish that further work is, something that's behind the paywall that can't be as open. But basically, how do you feel potential issues of self-plagiarism fit in with open research dissemination? Is it a danger, or are these issues that can be navigated fairly easily?
I think there's a distinction between self-plagiarism itself and adapting or reusing your work to actually build upon that to publication going ahead. I don't think it will actually conflict one with another. I don't think it's the same thing. So okay, I would say to actually continue to do that, because I don't consider that to be self-plagiarism. It's about developing your own work and building upon that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sofia. That was really helpful. And just to add a kind of general comment, it's true that STEM disciplines tend to talk about open research a bit more openly than other disciplines. That's partly due to funder requirements, which in itself has driven both uptake of open research practices and also the proliferation of tools available to STEM researchers to facilitate open research. But there are long-standing traditions of openness in other disciplines. I used to do field archaeology, rescue archaeology, and part of the contractual conditions of every rescue dig we did was that you deposit some of your data and results in accessible archives. So there are traditions in the arts and humanities and in the social sciences of open research tapped into, and the issues can be navigated. There are plenty of resources out there, and there have been lots of helpful resources from people in the chat, as well as the resources from our speakers. So in closing the webinar, just before 11, Jameen and Sofia, thank you so much for your presentations today. They were really insightful and, dare I say, inspiring. It's great to see both the lived personal experience from Jameen, but also Sofia's really broad description of what an institution can do to facilitate open research. And there was lots of really exciting learning points from there.